Hello, I'm Sam Longoria, and this is the Improv Zone. Thanks for being with us tonight. This is
Gary Schwartz.
Gary Schwartz.
Yep.
Improv maven. That's Gary. Gary's doing, and he's moving and shaking in the improv world. You've recently put together a proposal to create a series of video tutorials for the Viola Spolin games.
Right, Improvisation for the Theater. The book, Improvisation for the Theater, has been around since 1963, and it gave rise to the whole improvisational theater movement. And I was lucky enough to study with Viola in 1976, from 1976 all the way through until the 90s. And we did almost all of her games in that book, and I was coached by Viola.
You're pretty well known as a side coach.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, that's the whole idea of Spolin games, is that a game needs a side coach. Every game needs a side coach. Basketball, there's a coach on the sidelines yelling at the players, exhorting them to make the basket, to watch behind them where the openings are. That third eye, that overview, and that diagnostic ability to know what's needed at the moment it's needed, versus a regular improv director would watch a show and allow
give notes at the end,
and allow his players to fail. As a matter of fact, tell the players, get used to failing. Failing is fine. Failing is good, and there's nothing wrong with failing, but why fail when you can have somebody who knows exactly what to say at the moment to make it fly, right? And that's the purpose of a side coach. It actually becomes part of the show, part of the playing. And
you said the magical word. The magical word is playing.
Absolutely.
When a bunch of actors get together and we have words on a page and we memorize them and we do them, that's a play, of course. But play means that it's not serious. We're doing it for the fun of it, and a state of play is what the Spolin games evokes.
Right. Well, even Shakespeare called Hamlet's advice to the players, not to the actors. The players, and the play is the thing. Play is the essence of theater, really.
How would you describe the state of play?
The state of play is a physiological and psychological state that the mind and body are working harmoniously together, and your intuition is activated. And the state of play allows you to fully invest in whatever moment you're in and spontaneously be ready for whatever comes along in the play. Just like any football player, basketball player, anyone who plays sports knows that you don't follow a script. You follow the ball, and whither to the ball goes, that's where you go.
Moment by moment.
Moment by moment, and that's what determines what you do, and it happens spontaneously. And that's what Viola conceived of as the state to be in when you're acting. When you're playing with another player.
A lot of things get opened up. Your energy gets opened up when you're in a state of play. Your intuition can go through the roof. I don't mean to brag, but I was a contestant on Jeopardy, and I did okay. I'm not a sports guy, and they asked a whole bunch of sports questions, and I utterly astonished myself by pulling answers out of the air. Who was Shoeless Joe Jackson?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And it was because I was in the moment. I don't know where these answers came from.
Right.
Maybe I'd heard them, maybe not. But it was quite mysterious.
But you were accessing that information not consciously. You were accessing that intuitively. And because all of the information is there, what we have a problem with, and what everybody basically deals with when they try to transcend the limitations of self-consciousness, and how am I doing? No, I should do it this way. No, I saw how it was done that way. Boy, that guy did it great the other day. I want to do it just like him. All of that is going to interfere with how you should naturally do it. And you can't plan how naturally to do it. The same way you can't plan that I'm going to run to the left when the guy comes to tag me on the right. You are taking in all of that information simultaneously and filtering it not through your conscious mind, but intuitively understanding what's needed at the moment. And that spontaneous action is what we're after on stage.
Mm-hmm. The state of play. Well, the last time that you were here, we talked about an exercise called Follow the Follower.
Right.
And you said that would probably be one of the very first exercises that you would present someone with who wanted to get started in this
Right.
whole wonderful thing. And because that it brings about the state of play.
Exactly.
And it doesn't necessarily work the same way that yes and does. It gives you different.
Right. Like we were talked about before, yes and is a way to allow group agreement to happen on an intellectual level. Following the follower incorporates, well, you know, it's very interesting. There's a popular phrase going around in improv that for the last, I don't know, decade or two, it's called make your partner look good.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And, you know, Sanford Meisner, the great acting teacher Sanford Meisner, developed some exercises along those lines. And so what I ask my players is, you know, okay, you say make your fellow player look good. How do you do that? Well, the way you do that is by not worrying about how you look. And that, again, all it's saying is don't be self-conscious. But how can you not be self-conscious if you consciously know, oh, I shouldn't be self-conscious?
That's right. I've got to stop being self-conscious. Oh,
right.
My God, I'm
Oh,
self-conscious.
no, I should. How can I make you look good? How can I make you look good? But if you're thinking that intellectually, if you're thinking that intellectually, you're not really making your partner look good. You're worried about yourself. How can I make you look good? So that's really, that's the problem.
Being self-conscious.
Self-consciousness in all of its forms. And Viola had a great thing. She said, you know, avoid the I. Avoid saying I, referring to I. When we do an exercise, a mirroring exercise like mirror speech, you know, one of the 3 rules is you know, reflect only what you hear at the moment you hear it. Avoid questions, which separates you from the mirror, and avoid the word I. So when we're mirroring and we're doing anything, you know, you talk about the subject itself rather than, I think horses are beautiful. I love when horses run. So if the topic is horses, can you talk about horses without
saying what you think about them?
Without I in the process, because I is self-referential. And that's old information, and that's all about you. So if you're really truly interested in making your partner or even the subject itself look good or be objective, avoid I. I is a very subjective position to take.
I had a bit of an epiphany once. I was working with, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called the Sedona Method. No. And it is a system for people who want to relieve themselves of emotional baggage. You want to get rid of old feelings and old routines that you've run that don't work.
Right.
And it's a very simple thing to do. It's very hard to get your mind around it. And one of the things that they have you do is just let this all go. Just let it go.
How? What's their method?
Their patented copyrighted method?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's recognizing that in order to hold on to something, it requires effort. And I guess they patented Buddhism because the idea is that you want to remove desire.
Right.
You want to free yourself of desire, because when you have desire for things or situations or whatever, it causes you to stretch in a direction that you wouldn't necessarily. The thing that I was struck by was when you've done this, you realize I don't have to work on me at all.
No.
I am who I am. This is what I am.
Right.
And it's like a tremendous weight drops away from you. And I use that in my stage work. because if I can stop thinking about what I want in the scene and let the scene be, it's always better.
Yeah, it's very liberating to not have to worry about what you are doing. You don't worry about what you are doing or how you look doing it when you're playing a game of tag. You don't go, tag, oh my God, I must really leave and go in a,
My form was very poor.
Yeah, you just go, and it's not about you. It's about, it's just not about you. Viola had she wrote poetry, and I published her poems in a little vanity volume called Excursions into the Intuitive. And one of my favorite poems that I usually tell when I'm setting up the exercise of mirroring speech is, I said, avoid the word I. And invariably, when you see students try at the beginning, they always go, I like this, I hate that. And I say, move away from I. And then, so when they hear themselves say I, they go, oh, I shouldn't do that. I go, no, just leave it alone. I is the trap. Okay? So then I say, Viola has a poem called The Lament of the Abandoned Baby and Condemned Murderer, or How We All Gave Up Our Freedom and Learned to Become Robots. That's the title of the poem.
Wow.
And the poem goes like this. I,
Lovely. Lovely. I'm trying to think of a way of saying I get it without I.
You just laughed. That's it.
Oh, that's it. That's it.
I mean, the thing is, we spend so much time worrying about ourselves, and the culture puts it on us, and Cosmopolitan makes you worry about how your orgasm is and how you look while you're having an orgasm. All of that's such bullshit. Mm-hmm. And making your partner look good means just stop thinking about how you can make your partner look good. Don't even worry about, if the minute you lose I, you automatically make not only your partner look good, but everything you do.
I was privileged once to be on the stage with a very famous improviser. Uh-huh. He's also litigious, so I'm not going to mention his name. Uh-huh. But the thing I was struck by, and he had a hit TV show, and he was doing all of this stuff, and it was, just a privilege to be on the stage with him, except I watched him, and he was a bulldozer. He would get on the stage, and he would, if somebody was on the stage with him, he would climb right over them. Mm-hmm. And there was no give and take. There was no working together. There wasn't. It was just, I'm the star, and I've got these jokes, and I'm going to get them out. Mm-hmm. And it was discouraging. And what do you say? You can't say, gee, I don't like him. I do enjoy his comedy. It's pretty good.
That's interesting.
He's no fun to play with.
I was sitting in a workshop. Viola was at the Heliotrope Theater, and she was looking in on Paul Sills' group, the Sills and Company. And he developed this format of playing her Spolin Theater games as a show, which is the show that the Spolin players that I directed now still use. And I attribute it to Paul Sills. He created that format. And it's just a series of games you play, and you explain the rules, and you let the audience know that there's going to be a side coach. Well, we had an actor, like you were talking about, and he was very big and very broad, and he was very clever and very fast, and he was very entertaining to watch. Mm-hmm. But there was that little spark was missing, And Viola would be coaching, and she'd be side coaching, from the audience, and she'd say things and call out, use your wear, camera on so and so, and nothing penetrated to him, right? Mm-hmm. So she leaned over to me, and she said this. She said, how do I get him to know that he's showing off without telling him he's showing off? And see, that's the essence of side coaching right there. How do you get somebody to become more aware of what they're doing by not telling them Because when it's told to you by a so-called authority figure, like you get notes from the director, the all-knowing director, it comes from an authority figure. It comes from outside of you. So you may take that direction and try your best to accommodate that direction. But if it's a direction that's a critique, to say, you're showing off, stop it, versus what can I say to him while he's playing that will let him drop that habit or that position.
Find something better.
Find something to do that replaces his need to show off, to be an exhibitionist. Without saying, you're being an exhibitionist, stop it. Right? Because that's not side coaching, that's directing.
Yeah.
And Viola was all, so this is a very interesting, this leads to the idea of what is good side coaching? And what is a side coach? Now, I have a very funny story. I was auditioning here in Seattle. I was auditioning here in Seattle for an improv group,
yeah.
and I had 30 people come to the audition. And basically what we did is we played games, and I would watch to see who could play and who had the natural ability. And although everybody has the ability to play, you know, you want to find those players who can grab it pretty quickly so that you don't have to spend that much extra time. Well, anyway, we had this one player, actress, and she's doing a game, and I'm at the foot of the stage, and I'm saying, use your where, and you know, she would just sit there and chat and talk and stand around, and I say, use your where. I say, contact the other player, make some physical contact. And she wouldn't do it. She would just kept talking and talking.
She was still in her head.
She was very much in her head. But I wasn't trying to say I didn't say you're in your head. I tried to say what could I, you know, I said, you know, feel your feet, you know, sing the dialogue, do something to get you out of your head, right? That would, and I was trying to get her to do something that would allow her to step into the scene. Well, the more I side coached, the more she just kept talking louder and louder and longer. And I said, you know, sing your dialogue. And so she finally just said, will you shut up? She comes to the foot of the stage. She says, will you shut up? I am trying to improvise here.
Wow.
And I said, wow, well, you know, I'm trying to help you to improvise. Yeah. And she said, well, you're just yelling at me and making me feel like a failure. And I said, well, you know, I was trying to give you things to do that would help you. And she just said, well, I don't need your help. And I realized at that moment that she was not a player. She was not really improvising. She was doing something else.
She was just talking.
So I said, well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And that just showed me that she was so conditioned to seek that approval and she was not a player. She was not able to
talk to me about play. Seeking approval, because I know that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's really, Viola called it the Approval Disapproval Syndrome. And she said it was the major ill of the 20th century. And she said it's really what we all have to strive to overcome, the Approval Disapproval Syndrome. In other words, when you are raised practically from birth, you're being instructed by those outside of you toward behavior that is either approved of or not. Oh, look how cute he is. Oh, look how good he is. Oh, Johnny, that was wonderful what you did.
Or disapproval.
Or, you know, I don't like what you did and I'm going to withhold.
Or really, really subtle, like really?
Oh, passive aggressiveness.
Is that really what you're doing?
Sure, passive aggressiveness. All of that, in all of its forms, is what we spend a lot of money for therapists to help talk us out of.
Right.
But it's the approval disapproval syndrome that we get so hooked into, it becomes what I call an invisible norm. It becomes something so invisible we don't even know that that's our state.
And it's a trap, isn't it?
It's the trap. And it also leads to developing the false self, the self you want to put forth that you think other people would like, right? And so you don't do things because you feel instinctively that's what I should be doing. You worry about, how should I do that so that he will like me, or that I will get the audience's approval, or whatever.
So the teacher will think I'm a good student.
And so that I can get an A and I can get a compliment from the student, from the teacher. Mm-hmm. Well, see, it's interesting, and you'll hear a lot of viola students say, Viola never told me I was good. Dick Shaw said it in an interview. He said, right. She never told me I was good, but she never told me I was bad. She avoided using any terminology that
had to do with approval.
That had to do with approval, disapproval. Just, did you hit the ball? Did you not hit the ball? A strikeout in baseball doesn't mean you're a terrible player. It means you struck out. And if you don't judge it, then you're ahead of the game. Mm-hmm. You just know that you struck out. Which is why I have a bone to pick with people who talk about get used to failing. Fail quite a lot. Enjoy failing. Failure is it.
Fail forward fast.
Yeah, fail as much as you can. But the word failure itself embodies the approval disapproval syndrome. Can you actually do activities and not even consider the concept of failure or mm-hmm. success? Mm-hmm. Just try your best.
Well, also, the word failure has a decidedly negative connotation.
It's a loaded word.
And actually, fail is half of try and fail. Mm-hmm. And try and fail is how we learn anything. We tie our shoes, right. We do anything. And it's not a bad thing. It's just the process we have to go through to learn something. And I grew up in a very judgmental home. It was like, oh, you want to do that? Oh, don't you know where that leads? That leads to failure, like that little boy. Look at him over there. Sad creature that he is. And you just, it's so loaded, and it just whacks you.
Yeah.
So
now, I don't want to sound too harsh on the idea that those improv teachers who ask you to enjoy failing or fail quite a lot or expect to fail, what they're trying to do is lessen the sting, yes, of the word failure, because it is such a judgmental word. And but the thing is there's a way to actually just avoid the whole concept by playing and not having the space in your mind to even judge I fail or not fail. There's a state, like children, like a little toddler, right? Like you said, tying your shoe. What if the toddler tries to tie his shoe and he falls over, right? The toddler doesn't go, God damn it, I fell over. Jesus Christ, I can't tie my shoe.
Whack, whack,
right?
Stop cursing.
He just says, I fell over. Let me try it again. Let me try it again.
Mm-hmm.
He does not assign the fact that falling over is failing. It's just was part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
But when you call it failure, you're trapping yourself in that approval disapproval syndrome. And like I said, it's very invisible. People don't even realize that we're caught in it. That it's our society. It's how we are taught to be good little students, and so our effort is no longer predicated on, let me see if I can do this, because I want to see if I can do it. It's predicated on, let me see if other people will like me, or I will win everybody's approval, or everybody will think I'm great if I do this. So even though the action is the same, the motive is different. If the motive is to get the audience's approval, then you have to be so extraordinarily talented.
Yeah, constantly.
Constantly, and it's a burden.
Yes, I've noticed. But I see where you're going with that. I remember an improviser, a lady, had a T-shirt that said "cheaper than therapy," and this is every time we did a rehearsal. She wore this shirt, and it was funny. And then after a while, you start realizing this is cheaper than therapy, and it's good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get rid of an awful lot of bad feelings. You
right.
work out a lot of old things that you needed resolved. And what I guess I would ask you, since you are the side coach extraordinaire, if you saw somebody who was up on the stage and they were just obviously trying to work out old stuff, and all their scenes were these enormous, and you know the type of player I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Everything is about suicide, or it's about this, or it's about something huge and gigantic. Do you feel like steering them away from that? Do you feel
No. Viola would she would shout, she would yell, stop! What are you doing? And a lot of people would take her yelling as, oh, I'm bad.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting because, again, a raised voice to a lot of people automatically makes them feel like they're no good. But she would stop a scene like that. And I remember her saying one time, she had so many great sayings. She would say, don't use your own tears. This is not psychodrama. Use the character's tears. She said, don't use your own tears. See, that's the method acting of, find something in yourself, goes back to I, right? So she'd say, and if somebody was trying to work out some issue, she would just stop the scene. There are times when, obviously, it's beyond, the player cannot play. And Viola allowed everybody to be at whatever level they were at for the longest time, and she would never say you're good or you're bad. But there was one time that I remember this one gal. She was in our class for quite a while, and we were doing a spacewalk or something, and she was just completely out of it. And Viola racked her brain. I remember I used to drive Viola home a lot, and she would always say, I don't know what to tell this girl. I don't know what I could give her that's going to stop her from doing this. She was so completely in her head. So as gently as she could one day, in front of everybody, she said, honey, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the workshop. And this was just, she was crestfallen. And she looks at this girl and she says, look, I've tried everything. I'm not helping you. And I don't know what to do. So I think it's best if you just move on. Now, very interesting, because I'll tell you another story associated with that about me, in the fact that I was also a terribly not poor student, I wasn't getting it for the longest time in Viola's class. I was, in my head, I was seeking everybody's approval, especially Viola's.
Sure.
And Viola and I got to be friends, and I would be driving her home. And after one particularly frustrating workshop, Viola says, pull into Vaughn's parking lot. I would shop for her and cook for her. And I stopped the car, and she turned to me and she goes, honey, she said, maybe you should think about doing something else. Now,
wow.
Yeah, and everybody, when I tell that to people, they go, "Oh my God!"
Yeah, really.
And it
right
did. It did sting. It was not. It didn't feel good, but I understood what she was saying. I was just not getting it, and this was I was almost done with almost a year of working with her, not getting it for a year, wanting desperately to get it, and so and I know she said it out of the kindness of putting an end to my frustration. So I looked at her and I said, Viola, I know I'm not getting it, but there's nothing else I'd rather be doing right now than coming to class. So then she said, well, I respect that, okay.
Yeah, really.
But what's very interesting is years later, after I had my breakthroughs, and I was 10 years along, we were at a party one time, and Viola actually said to everyone assembled, she said, Gary, there was a time I once told you that you should maybe not do this work. And she said, well, I was wrong. You said, "You're a fine player and coach." Now, that, she didn't need to say that.
No, that's wonderful.
And she didn't do it to stroke my ego. She did it to admit she was wrong. Now, it's interesting because a lot of times my students will think that whatever I say as a side coach, oh, I'm this genius. And if they don't get it, it must be their fault. And I tell my students, I say, you know what, half the time I'm in my head too. And I might be wanting to side coach you. I may be not side coaching properly. I may be subconsciously manipulating you. Don't take everything I say as it. And again, it goes back to that approval disapproval thing. How can you be a fellow player and yet have a background of experience that will inform your students without saying, I'm the authority? Well, I tell other teachers, play with your students. Mm-hmm. You know, I play with the kids, for example, and we played this game called Who Started the Motion? Or a game where you have to go out of the room and then come back and try to figure something out, right? It's all of those kind of fun games. Mm-hmm. And so
Who am I?
Yeah, the Who Am I game and all of this stuff. But even like at the little kids level, at like 10, 12-year-olds, right? I'm playing a game where I have to go out of the room and then the kids have to do something. And when it's my turn to go out and I play, I allow myself to go out and be, you know, I listen and I hear at the door, I say, let's make it really hard for Mr. Schwartz. And I come back in the room and I say, it's hard enough, you know, don't make it any harder just because I'm your teacher. Yeah. I said, you know, but if you play with your students mm-hmm. and don't just sit back and be the guru and be the pontificator and be the authority, it goes a long way to eliminating that approval disapproval, that you're a fellow player.
Builds trust and a bond. And
yeah, and that there's peerage in the group, mm-hmm. even for the leader. Mm-hmm. The leader is not this inviolable thing. This leader is just one part of the whole. Mm-hmm. You know?
Well, I've seen your work. You're a very good leader.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you very much for being with us tonight. This has been the Improv Zone with Sam Longoria and Gary Schwartz.